Hello and welcome to the next episode of the Live Your Spa Life show. Spa life is a lifestyle that accepts that accomplishment and harmony coexist. The spa and spa life, the SPA, is for seek power always, that power within you to do your deeper work here in the world. I am so excited to introduce to you my special guest today, Amber Trueblood. She has an MBA. She's a licensed marriage and family therapist, an author, a retreat host, and a mother of 4 sons. Interestingly enough, Amber wrote Stretch Marks, which is her debut book, while on a Broadway tour with her husband and 4 sons, traversing over 60 cities across the U.S. and Canada. Amber is most passionate about providing mothers simple and realistic tools to guide them towards happier, calmer parenting life. Amber, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. This is really exciting.
Well, this is so timely because, especially with you having 4 sons and our new normal of what the world looks like, you know what it's like with having everybody under one roof and looking at things from a different perspective for sure. Let's just jump into the whole, stress in quarantine. Like, how has this been in your family, and what are some of the tips that you're sharing with parents?
Well, it's funny that you brought up tour life, because there are a lot of consistencies and similarities in the two. And, some of the spaces that we lived in were not ideal and were very small, and they didn't have a school to go to, and they didn't have friends to play with in the given city that we were in. And so a lot of the tools that we figured out along the way are applicable now, I think, to most people. And one of those is kind of a different mindset that is helpful if you adopt when you move from maybe having your kids in school to all of a sudden at home. A lot of people are trying to replicate exactly what the kids were doing at school while they're still working full time. And for most people, it's just not possible. The expectation is just way too high. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yeah. I remember talking to a teacher that said, don't try and replicate what we do in the regular school year. Like, this is an opportunity to look outside the box and do things differently. Like, maybe you're cooking together and they're learning math because of measurements, and there's different ways to do that. And so looking at things differently, we have a different opportunity.
That's so true. And there really are a lot of opportunities here. And when you speak to any parents that have been doing homeschool for any length of time, you'll find that their experience is, even if a child was struggling in school or, bored in school because they can go really fast, both of those, and just your, average kids that were right on par with everybody else in their grade level, you'll find that they're able to absorb the same amount of information in a far shorter period of time. Because if they're not getting something, right away, or the online program knows right away, or they will tell you, I don't get this, doesn't make sense. They're more likely to speak up than to kind of just be quiet and maybe possibly get left behind. So you can catch them before the content goes too far ahead. So in general, they'll say, like, really maybe what happens over 6 or 7 hours in school can happen in 2 hours, 3 hours. You might have started to hear that already. Parents will say, oh my gosh, my kid is done with their stuff by noon. What am I supposed to do? So in that, there are a lot of opportunities for other ways to do things. And also, one of the interesting opportunities I've used and seen is the autonomy and independence and kind of confidence that you can build. So my kids right now are 7, 9, 11, and 12. And every day they write a list of what they're going to do that day. But it's not just schoolwork. Like, it needs to include like a household chore, not just like a clean up your room, make your bed, but something that benefits the whole family and then keeps us moving forward. It includes like outside time or physical play time. It includes they all play instruments, so it includes some sort of musical practice, either together or independently. So and then it includes like something creative too. So every morning by about 9:15, they show me their list. When we started doing this, I thought, okay, this is going to take, it's like, show me your list and I'm going to have to edit it. But I was really surprised how quickly they knew exactly what was supposed to be on their list, and the pride with which they would present, I'm done with my list, or look at this, or their lists also became like really ornate and like beautiful, like drawings. My 7-year-old had like just the making of the list in and of itself became like an artistic challenge.
I love this. There's such a, intentionality in your day, and for them to, where now a lot of things can feel out of control, and a lot of people feel displaced in their normal way of being. But what a great way to give your kids some power to really be co-creative in their day and what's important to them, and to get that immediate feedback of, if they're doing this each day, they can start seeing, where do they succeed, where do they want to shift and alter, and what a great skill set to learn, in this process, to be shifting into the new normal.
Exactly. And you can have a sense of humor with it too. So for instance, I got really tired of telling my boys, like, okay, well, you made your bed, but did you brush your teeth? Oh, I forgot to brush my teeth. Or, okay, you made your bed and you brushed your teeth, but you've been in those pajamas for 3 days. Things like that. So I started calling it the trifecta. Brush your teeth, get dressed, make your bed. Brush your teeth, get dressed, make your bed. And so instead of saying those 3 things, I would just say, did you do your trifecta? And they began calling it the trifecta of terror. And so now that's funny. So now on their list, they'll literally write trifecta of terror and like a box. So there's a way to make it fun too. And it doesn't have to be like, well, did you do this? Well, check the box, and very formal. Like, I'm not saying you're everybody's best friend, but there's a way to be playful about it. And, my kids know, like, okay, you've been joking. Like, they'll literally start writing like, joke things on the list. So it would say something silly, and then at the end of the list it would say, make mom laugh. And if I laughed by the end of the list, they would check that off.
Nice. Well, there's something so satisfying to actually check something off and feel that sense of accomplishment. So, and I love this trifecta of terror. Speaking of terror and fear, talk a little bit about how fear is psychological and how you maneuver through that.
Yeah, and it's so true. I remember when I started public speaking, and I thought, and I knew that was like my next step. And I thought, well, oh gosh, I get so nervous up on stage, and I'm sweaty, and I'm this, and I'm afraid I'm going to stutter or be, just not be articulate, not be able to get my point across. And I had a lot of people will give you advice at that point, right? And I read Marie Forleo's book, and she talks about fear being physiological. And, can you really survive, the increased heart rate, the sweating, the, your increased respiration, can you survive 10 or 15 minutes of that? Yeah, I can live through that. Can you survive being uncomfortable for a few minutes? And I thought, well, heck yeah, I totally can. As long as I can physically get the words out, then I'm going to get up there on stage and do it. And then obviously with each experience, you gain practice and confidence, and then that fear, minimizes itself. But sometimes that's easier said than done. There's a lot of us who deal with anxiety regularly, and we realize it's a problem, and we realize that we have control over it, or that we feel like we should have control over it. But it's easier said than done especially in this particular situation. So I would argue it's like all hands on deck. All the tools that have worked for you in the past to deal with either existing anxiety or periods of time in the past when you've experienced it, if it's not a common thing for you, everything, bring it all on. Like, there's no amount of like, oh, that's too much self-care. Like, I'm too calm now, like, really, like, if meditation has worked for you in the past and you haven't figured out a way to fit it into your schedule now, go back to it, find a way to fit it in reasonably, and start small if you need to. But I would say all hands on deck, all tools that have worked for you in the past, and then take advantage when you see somebody saying, hey, I'm starting this morning meditation for 6 days. Like, do you want to do it with me? Try it, maybe try adding on some tools. I've talked to people about Epsom salt baths. People have recommended that to me. A gratitude journal is huge. Meditating is huge. Minimizing the stuff that is going to increase your anxiety is huge. And that doesn't just mean the obvious. Like, that doesn't just mean turning off the news and not scrolling through your Facebook feed. That also means, like, if Aunt Edna calls you and talks for 45 minutes about stuff that just makes you either really upset or really anxious or really scared. You know, we love Aunt Edna, but you need to take care of yourself first, right? And so maybe send her an email and say, oh, I'd love to talk to you today. Like, I hope you're doing well. Today's kind of crazy for me. You know, let's talk later, or try to move it into either a shorter time frame or, you know, words on a typewriter, words on your computer or your phone, you know, instead of listening to that live. So this is the people you surround yourself with is really important right now too.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that you mentioned Marie Folio. I love her phrase, figure outable. Like, and, you know, you mentioned about bringing, you know, all the tools here, you know, because yeah, this is not something we've done, you know, and it's just like any part of life where we're just having to look at what kind of shifts we need to do. And I love that, bringing like all tools and all hands on deck to really start troubleshooting that for yourself and seeing what works and doesn't work. And, you know, it's so important to look at who are the people that you're surrounding yourself with and being really conscious of setting some of those boundaries. I know with some of those, especially when it comes to family member, I mean, sometimes those could be some of the drains that we weren't anticipating, even though we love them, it doesn't really fit into the mindset that we're trying to cultivate in our immediate family. And so, you know, one of the things that we can do with that is like, let's say you've got an appointment at the top of the hour. You only talk to Aunt Edna like 10 minutes before that appointment. So it's a set amount of time and you're like, I gotta go,
Right.
you know, but there's ways to look at that and to shift how we are being. And so what is some of the things that, talk a little bit about family cohesion, like when you are in the house together 24/7 and in each other's face, what kind of tools are you doing to support that?
So, you know, as you were saying that, I want to start like back up a little bit. Is one of the things I think we can all stand to do right now is be kind to ourselves and be honest with ourselves. So one of the ways to be kind is to acknowledge the shift that you mentioned. Is this has not just been a all of a sudden we're staying at home shift. For a lot of people, this is I've gone from working somewhere else around other support people, having that commute time, to all of a sudden trying to figure out how to do the same things I was doing before at home, or completely changing my business. That's a huge shift just right there.
Yes.
And you didn't do it on
Agreed.
purpose or with any preparation. Okay. So that, let's acknowledge, holy moly, that's big deal. Okay. Now,
Definitely.
not only is that, you know, one of the shifts, but now you're surrounded by everybody else in your home, or you're alone 24/7. Both big shifts, right?
Definitely.
So that's the second big one. Third one is if you have children at home, they're now not entertained, or they're not going to soccer practice, they're not going to play dates, they're not going to school for 6+ hours. So, and you're trying to navigate what does school look like at home for them, and then every kid is different. Third, huge shift, right? And then the fourth one is, you know, if you're there with multiple people in your household, you're accustomed to having separate people have their own activities and own time and own space. And so now you're all in the house 24/7. So had none of those other changes occurred, except for you were all at the house, that's a huge change. So that's 4 really significant,
Right.
sudden changes.
Life-changing.
And that doesn't even account for the psychological and emotional fears and stressors that are, you know, have added to the agenda because of, you know, this pandemic. So that's a lot. So let's give ourselves like some breathing space and some like, I don't care what's happening in your house, you're already doing an amazing job. You know?
So everybody pat yourself on the back.
Pat yourself on the back.
For just getting up and dealing with the day.
Yes, it's huge. It's huge. So like have some, you know, have some gratitude toward yourself for, you know, for what you've experienced and all of this. I just lost video for a second. You still see me?
I do.
Okay, good. Sorry about that.
Yeah, no worries.
So I would say that. So yes, all of a sudden with everybody being at home in one space, like you're talking about tools for dealing with that.
Yes.
One of the things I would note is that there are different kinds of space. People need different kinds of space. So if you're in a really small physical space, if you're in a, you know, 2-bedroom, you know, apartment with 4 or 5 people, yes, you may need just physical space. Like, oh my gosh, I can't even physically find my stuff because, you know, the clutter that's added on. So finding ways to give each other physical space is one thing. And that might mean, for your partner, one of you maybe goes to bed earlier or wakes up earlier so that you have that time alone. Different people need more or less of that, right? It might mean you go take a shower or a bath for an extra 20, 30, 40 minutes to give that person time away, or you take that time away. So having really clear communication and reminding ourselves like, okay, it's not about me. This is not about this person wanting space from me. They just psychologically and emotionally need some physical space.
Right.
But it's not just physical space. So some people might need emotional space. So often we have a couple and one person maybe leans on the other more often for psychological and emotional support, right? And so, especially now. So just know that if you're the one that's doing the leaning, that person typically can probably take it, no problem. For years, maybe they've had that role. This is a little bit different of a situation, and perhaps you're the only one right now that they're leaning on, So be cognizant of that. Maybe, first of all, thank them, acknowledge how much you appreciate being able to lean on them for support. And maybe ask, hey, I can call my mom in the evenings too, if I feel like I really need to just vent or express my frustration a little bit, or, and I would argue also try to minimize that and then switch into a gratitude journal sort of mode if possible. But so some people might need some more emotional space. And if you communicate about that, that's helpful. And then this is the one I think people don't often think about, and this is mental space. So a lot of people are very visually oriented, or I'm very sensitive to sound. I mean, I live with 4 boys, so it gets really loud in here. In fact, I could reach over there, I have a pair of like headphone things that I'll put on just to minimize the like sound effects and all the loud noises that are happening all the time. But lots of time it could be visual clutter. So this would mean you go around your house, you take some stuff off the walls, put it in a closet. Be honest with yourself about what is overstimulating you right now. Obviously, things that you could handle before in the past and you'll be able to handle again in the future. This is a temporary time. So if you know that you're easily overwhelmed by visual stimuli or auditory, like maybe you're somebody who wants to have, The Office on Netflix in the background all the time because it lightens the mood and it makes you laugh and you just like to have that sense of, action going on. But maybe for your partner, that is draining for them to hear that constant background chatter. So communicating those things and being respectful of each other's needs for different kinds of space, I think can really, really benefit family cohesion.
Yeah, I love this. What I'm hearing is that we really have to be clear in our communication and, and talk pre-talk before it's in a place where people are resentful and upset and things happening, to really get real about what do you need in your space and how can there be trade-offs of, okay, we're going to have loud hours during this time, like a hotel, right? And then there's times where, hey, we all need to have a little bit of quiet and we need to shut down and have some of those things happen and find out what the flow is that. And I love it about talking about removing things from your space. When I retired from the police department, I created a course called Clutter to Calm. And it really was about looking at your space and removing those things that you don't love, that actually take energy away from you, that maybe you even just hate and you don't even know why it's in your space. I think even more now, because we're in our space more than normal, that we need to take those really proactive steps to see about how can we, lessen the load in the space and really shift things to really reflect what we now need with how things are happening. And so speaking of environment, I think it's a really important thing to look at that. And we have different ways of relating to our different rooms and how we feel in our rooms. So we have different experiences in our bedroom versus our kitchen versus our office. So for you, what is your favorite room in your home and why?
So it was really funny. Like the first week that this happened, we're fortunate enough to have like a little, an extra bedroom. And this is the room that was set up. We call it Grandma's room because when my mom would come, this is where she would stay, but it's like a couch. And it had still boxes in it and stuff from when we moved last summer. And so it was kind of a catch-all room, but it was okay. And the first week that this happened, I had an office, like a desk in the bedroom that I had been using as my office. And then I think I went away for a couple of days and I came back and my husband had all his computer stuff out all over it. And I was like, okay, you can have this space, but I'm going to go create another space. So he kind of sometimes will follow me around, you know, which is sweet. But I was like, okay, you stay here. I'm going to go create another space. So I did. I reorganized. I cleaned out the stuff that was in my mom's room. And now this is like my go-to space. And like this morning, all 4 boys were in here because my husband had a phone call in the other room. And so we all came in here and we were all like ordering books on Amazon and then reading. And it was really nice. And that's also a neat thing to do, is if you just like, you know, take field trips to different parts of the house.
Hello, family. Today we are visiting the granny flat.
Right, exactly. But I know that, yeah, it's being organized in your house and knowing what's going to trigger you. Like, this is the other thing, and you probably have a lot of overlap with this, is, you know, be honest with yourself about what's going to trigger you in the house and what's going to make your patience level go that much lower and that much lower. Because what we want to do is really amp up the self-care and communication so that our patience level's up here. Otherwise, you go down here, you step on a Lego and all hell breaks loose, right? Right? Or
right.
Anything tiny. I had a bee stung me the other day in my other room. Like, I was playing Monopoly with the kids and I went like this with my hair and I was like, I was like, how does that happen?
Random.
Right. But, you know, at that point, my page, you know, I didn't flip out. I was shocked. But so I always say, know your triggers and don't delegate something to somebody else if it's a trigger for you. Because if they don't do it right then, it's going to drive you nuts and you're going to resent them and you're going to be irritated and you're still going to be triggered. So it's taking out the trash or the laundry on the sofa or, you know, whatever it is, the mail being in a different place or being in a mess or shoes, whatever it is, if you know that's your trigger, I would right now, especially, this is not like a let's figure out who's in charge of this right now. No, if you know it's a trigger, take responsibility for that. I swear this will save you a lot of frustration. And then either, like for me, it's like 3 loads of laundry on the sofa in the living room. So I will either deal with it first thing and get it out of the way, or I will put it back in the laundry basket and shove it behind the couch so I don't have to look at it. Or I'll know, like, if I have back-to-back calls and I'm going to be in another room, then I know, okay, I'm not going to be walking past it 15 times this morning. So I know that about myself. If I say, okay, can you guys take care of the laundry this morning? If it's not done the next time I walk by, it's going to drive me nuts, right? So delegate the things that you would like to do, but are not major emotional triggers for you.
Great.
Take responsibility for those. And then be as effusive as you can right now with gratitude and acknowledgement for everything, as well as taking responsibility. Like if I say, sorry, I yelled about the laundry, that's a trigger. You could say, that's a total trigger for me, because then it's clear to them that it's really not about the laundry.
Right. Or them.
Yes. It signifies something else for you. So if you know, like my boys always know, like what we talk about, like understanding what people's pet peeves are, and the clearer you can, be about that from the get-go. And this is, their roommates in college when they get to college, or their bosses someday, like knowing what things irk people is a life lesson, right? So they know like what things will trigger dad, what things will trigger me. And we'll say like, you got to know your audience.
That's so good. So speaking of your audience and your book, I love the title Stretch Marks. There's so many different layers to what that is, not just physically on your body, but about moms who are stretched so thin in their life. Talk a little bit about what triggered you to write the book, and what are some of the things that people can expect to get from it? Okay.
Well, I love reading. I love words. I love books. I love just physically having books around me. So it's always been something really important in my life, and I love learning. So it's been a nice way to fold that in. And So I think in the back of my head, I always wanted to write a book, but I didn't know what it was going to look like, what that was going to be. And my background is in psychology. So I figured it would be something in the, self-help arena. But, once I had my children and I finished, I stayed home with them, which I never thought I would do. And then we ended up homeschooling, which I never thought I would do. And then we ended up going on this musical tour, which I never thought we would do. And all of them were incredibly positive experiences that I would choose again in a heartbeat. And when I decided, I'm really passionate about education, I'm passionate about parenting. And so I started by writing a parenting book. And I realized in the course of that I didn't feel like I could really help in the parenting world unless I first helped the parents. Because I think it's really hard to be the kind of parent you want to be if you are still dealing with a lot of your own issues and you still have a lot of false beliefs and you still are not trusting yourself and not being kind to yourself and not being honest with yourself and maybe just don't even have the tools to know what you want and how to uncover that and then how to go after it. So I kind of stepped back and started writing stretch marks then. And for me, it's really about, we all go through different traumatic experiences and we learn from them and we really grow from them. And if we haven't ever had any of those, which nobody hasn't, but, that's the place where we learn and stretch and grow. And that should be celebrated and highlighted and shared and not hidden and become a source of embarrassment, So a lot of it is about that. It's about, look, like being a mom, you learn so much and it's such an amazing opportunity and experience. So let's share what we've learned and let's be real about it because we've all had these terrible days when we just are like, want to just go back to bed, or literally those days when you're like, okay, so maybe if I sprain my ankle and I can end up in bed just to like have a break and like sleep. I mean, like literally, you talk to parents, you get to the point where you're like, so I want to be sick enough that I don't have to do dishes, but I don't want to be so sick that, like it's true. And it's just because I think a lot of us really don't have the tools and the skills and the support system. And so that's exactly what I wanted to write in the book. I wanted to give a slew of potential tips and tricks that were realistic and simple, but that you could choose from so that I could say like, look, I don't know your life. I don't know your values. I don't know your lifestyle. I don't know your personality. And what maybe would work for you great now wouldn't have worked 2 years ago. So it's also timing. So, so a lot of the book is about like, look at yourself. What are your values? What's important to you? What is your lifestyle like? What is happening in your life right now so that you can then pick from one of these tools that I'm, laying out here and really realistically implement it in your life with a high chance of success and not just copy what some random stranger did that worked for them.
Right. Well, I love that part of your unique approach is for people to clarify their values and their priorities and really utilize that, because once they have the foundation of that, then they can use that knowledge to then decide how they're going to discipline, how they're going to connect with their family and what that looks like. Can you share a little bit about how you've done that in your family and how you really you have that as a foundation for other people? Because I think knowing your values, a lot of people don't see as starting with that and that being like the go-to, if that you always reference that in all the decisions you make after that.
And I do everything because this sounds funny, but I do it if it makes my life easier, right? Yes. So I had 4 children back to back to back, and I really want it to be fun and easy, which is not always either one of those things, but that's my goal. If it's stressful and exhausting and unrelenting in a negative way, that's miserable for me and for everybody. And, we've got another 10 years, with all 4 of them probably in the house. And that's a long time. And I would like to enjoy it. And I would like to, go on vacations with them and hang out with their families for the rest of our lives. So if I raise a bunch of kids that are, rude and disrespectful, or, insecure, or feel, or competitive and bickering with each other all the time, that's miserable for everybody, right? So from the get-go, like when they were really little, my husband and I, we would print out these big, like, cartoon, empty things on the walls, and we would put in words that were important to us, character traits like creative, compassionate, kind, all these words, and we would talk about them. And then we would say, like, oh my gosh, when you did that today, that was so kind, like, how neat. And then you call grandma and you let them over here. You know what so-and-so did today was so compassionate. I saw, like, his brother fell and he ran right over there, picked him up, and and immediately kids hear that and they take that in and they think, oh my gosh, if I'm kind and compassionate and creative and independent, wow, that's just the most amazing thing. And if you don't know what those 4 or 5 traits are for you, think of this, like, think of your kids graduating from high school, and the college counselor or the high school counselor comes up to you and says, oh my gosh, your daughter is so incredibly blank, 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 and blank. Whatever words would just fill you with the most pride and excitement, those are your qualities. Like, those are the things you value most right now.
I love that. What a great way to be able to do that. Because I know a lot of people are like, oh, I'm not sure what that is, but it's in that practical application of what that actually looks like. So I love that, just kind of that, the path of least resistance, of actually having like a fun, enjoyable family life to be able to do that. And you've definitely cultivated that in your family. And for, those of our listeners who may not know, Amber's sons are a bit famous, and they have their own group. They are called CDME, which is from the initials of their names. And they have a band, and they all play instruments, and they actually play concerts for people and go to events and all that. Talk a little bit about how did they choose their instruments? How did they come together as a band? What is that like as, brothers in a home, all playing very loud instruments,
right?
And, making their mark in the world and their individuality. How does being in the band really affect your family, and what's that experience been like?
Diane, that's such a cool question. Nobody's ever asked me that. So first of all, people always ask if I'm a musician or my husband is a musician, and neither one of us are musicians. He's a photographer, and he plays some guitar now, and he's been learning, about the technology involved with, like, supporting musicians. So my oldest son started drumming when he was really young. We were at a friend's house, and we noticed that I have 4 boys. They all like to get on a drum set. Like, I've seen a million kids love to do that. But he seemed to be able to pick up a very specific types of drum beats very early. So we ended up getting a used drum set, like, when he was like 2, like a full giant drum set. And because the kid baby ones would just fall apart immediately. So anyway, and we found a couple fun drum teachers that would come and go, because it was hard to kind of make it fun, but also feel like they're learning something. And then, so he just kept progressing. And then when my second son was, maybe 6 or 7, he started playing piano. And the younger ones kind of didn't play anything at that time. And then a friend said, who was involved with musical theater, said, oh, there's a Andrew Lloyd Webber musical called School of Rock based on the old Jack Black movie. And it's been on Broadway for a few years, and it's doing really well. And they want to open a touring company. So they're auditioning for the touring cast or something like that. You should send a video. So I thought, oh, okay, how funny, I'll send a video. So I sent a video thinking nothing would come of it. They responded and wanted, more stuff. We wanted to see if he could act and sing. And so we sent back that stuff. And my husband did work in the entertainment industry, so he knew how, and he's a photographer, so he knew how to make, like, a proper video. And, we had a little bit of help with that. He made these really adorable videos. We sent it in, and they said, well, can you come to New York for an audition? So we thought, and we live on the West Coast, so we thought, oh, how fun. This will be, the one time, the story you'll have that you auditioned once for a Broadway show. Like, what a cool story that will be. And we had never taken the kids to New York. So we thought, let's just make a whole, like, kind of vacation out of it, because I didn't want to have all that pressure for like a 15-minute audition. Like, we're going to fly all the way across the US. We're going to spend all this money. You know, that's a lot of pressure for a 10-year-old. So, so we all went. He did his audition. I got my 9-year-old in on like a kind of second audition. I said, oh, I have more kids. They play instruments. Do you want anything? Like,
how many kids you want?
what do you need? And but they saw him. They let my second son audition as well, so he got to experience in that. And then he was kind of like on the, like, in their radar, even though he was too young. So anyway, cut to 6 months later, they offered him the role. And because my husband had worked in the entertainment industry on movies, and we had traveled and lived in the towns where those movies were, we knew the stress that can put on a family to be separated for months and months at a time. So he and I knew right away. Like, somebody asked me, well, why did you decide to all go together? Like, wouldn't it have been so much easier to like not do that? And they said, was it just really, was Cameron really sad to be away from his brothers, or why did you do it that way? And I said, I did it because I realize and appreciate how fragile relationships can be, even if they feel super, super, super strong. That's a lot of pressure to be apart for that period of time for everybody involved.
Great insight.
And it was just something we said, either we figure out how we could do this so that we all go, or we just don't do it. We pass on it, you know? And so we figured it out, and my husband took a hiatus from work, and we all hit the road and rented out our house on like VRBO while we were gone, and got Airbnbs. And every week we were in a new town. I've now forgotten the question. Oh, I know. So, well, but this particular musical has like a lot of rock music in it. And so there are a bunch of kids, and all these kids were incredible musicians, like just blow your mind. And then, you know, there were the pit musicians, so the adult professional musicians that travel with the cast as well. And so those were the people that you could call on to schedule lessons with, like, you know, paid lessons, like off time. So my young kids started doing lessons with these like top-notch Broadway, you know, musicians that we never would have had access to had we not been stuck with them in all of these, they were stuck with us.
Yeah.
So what they would learn from, like, you know, a 1-hour bass lesson with the bassist in the pit was like 6 months worth, I feel like. Yes. You know, a down the street sort of, you know, group music lesson for a 7-year-old. So, and also because my younger kids had such inspiring role models with all of these other kid musicians who were just also really cool kids that they would just go play with. And all of these professional actors and actresses, it just was, I think, super inspiring for them. And we ended up staying on the road for 16 months. So that's a lot of time for a 7-year-old or an 8-year-old. You know, that's a huge percentage of their life. Imagine like 20% of your life you're on the road with all these professional museums. Like, it would impact you too, right?
Now when they're in high school, they'll be like, yeah, when I was on the road and I was part of the band. And it's like, what fun experiences where they get to actually have the practicality of not just learning the actual instrument, but then to actually see it be applied within the play. So, I mean, this is almost like an immersion program,
for
right?
Sure. Yeah.
So how fun is that?
Yeah. So they had a couple of benefit concerts while we were on the road. So their first one, I think they did last March in Cleveland. And that was the first time all 4 boys played together. And it was really, really, really cool. And they enjoyed it so much. And I think they got, you know, you get a lot of attention and positive reinforcement from people. And then that encourages you to learn more songs. So now they play music every day. They're writing their own music, and it's been really cool. And managing the dynamics involved in that too has been interesting.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I mean, so great that they get to have each other to play together and to still have that experience and the group experience. And, you know, I know for some of the listeners because their videos are really fun. I've actually watched several of them. So you can go to cdme.com and get
CDME band, I think it is.
Is it
CDME band?
CDME band?
Yes.
Okay, so cdmeband.com, and you will just see these adorable boys just rocking out. And it's just so fun to see, you know, when people have passion at such a young age, and just how they are developing, and how you just are providing this environment for them. So I just, I know people are going to want to get your books and be able to stay in contact with you. How are they going to do that?
Yeah, so I have a website. It's ambertrueblood.com. And my books right now, probably, you know, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Target online is the best way to get them. And Stretchmarks is the book. And then I wrote a journal to accompany it, because I had a lot of people say, oh, I wish, you know, I always want to keep all my notes in it, because there are affirmations and reading prompts, and kind of there's some thinking that goes along with it. You know, like I said, when you're kind of uncovering, oh, what are my top 5 things that are most important to me right now? So things like that, it's nice to have one place to kind of keep all of the stuff together. So I created a journal to go along with it. So if you just look up my name, Amber Trueblood, in Amazon, it'll show you the book and the journal. And then I'm working on, you know, I'm doing speaking now from grandma's room, speaking engagements, and, you know, webinars, and setting up a virtual boot camp is the next thing for parents.
Perfect. I love that. Any final thoughts for our parents out there?
I would just remind everybody to be kind to yourself, be honest with yourself, and say the words that you want to hear most. So if you want to hear appreciation and respect, give those words of appreciation and respect to the people that you're quarantined with right now, because that will go miles.
I love that. Well, thank you, Amber, so much for your wisdom and sharing at this most pivotal time for the parents need it the most, which is so great to have. And I want to thank our listeners as well for your time, because we know that even though you may seem to have more of it now, it's still very precious, and we really appreciate you being here. And no matter what platform you're either listening or watching this on, if you have any questions, you know, please tag Amber and myself in here. We're happy to help you with tools and supports to help this be much more smoother for you. And, you know, this is our virtual reality communities are becoming more of a reality. So please share and get the word out. We'd love any rates and reviews. We'll also put some things, not only how to get a hold of Amber, but also myself in the show notes. We also have a free gift for you. You can go to resetyourpowergift.com. That way you can have all kinds of different tools to help you move through this and to end up more powerfully on the other end. So until we connect again, live your spa life. Bye for now.